All right, good evening and welcome. The Parenting Center at Children's Hospital New Orleans would like to welcome all families to today's webinar. Our topic today will address teen development. We are joined today by our wonderful presenter, Patrice Wright. She is our Parenting Center Manager here at Children's Hospital. I will be your moderator this evening. My name is Dominique Burns. I am the Community and School Program Manager here at Children's Hospital. Our presenter, Patrice Wright, is the Administrative Manager at the Parenting Center. She received an undergraduate degree in early childhood education and a master's degree in educational administration from the University of New Orleans. She is a Louisiana Pathways trainer and a toddler class observer. Her career began in education as a kindergarten teacher. She then became a math coach, a Louisiana State Department employee, a school administrator, and worked in central office. Throughout her 22 years in education, she thoroughly enjoyed providing professional development and coaching to teachers. Her passion for working within the early childhood sector never faded, and she firmly believes that giving children a solid foundation in their early years sets their path for academic success. I will re-enter today's webinar later to read through any questions that might arise in our chat box. You can find the chat box icon at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to submit questions throughout tonight's presentation. Our webinar survey link is also posted in that chat box. We will try to answer the most pressing questions that arise. If your question is not answered during tonight's webinar, we will send those questions and answers to Keith Haywood to distribute to you all. I would like to now turn over tonight's presentation to Ms. Patrice Wright.
Good evening, everyone. Dominique, I'm sorry, I can't see myself. Can you see me? You can't see me. Not sure what's happening. If you just give me 1 second. I'm not sure what's going on, but Dominique, can you hear me?
I can. Hear you loud and clearly.
Hear me.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure what's going on and why you are unable to see me at this time, but I'm excited to be here. I wish you can see the excitement on my face, but of course, technology will not allow that to happen tonight. I am grateful and excited to be able to share information with you all today about teenagers. So we're gonna go ahead and get started and let you know what our focus is tonight on what it is that I'm hoping you walk away with from tonight's session. Our first objective is to learn about teen development. That's part of what tonight's session will be about. You will also learn about the different behaviors that are associated with the teen development as well. So that's where we're headed tonight. All right, I'm back online. Hi, everybody. I hope that you guys can now see me. Sorry about the delay. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to think about an incident, a recent incident that caused the disagreement between you and your teen. And I want you to hold on to it for now. So think about an incident. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about it. Now that you've had a chance to think about it, I just want to share a little bit about teen development. Teenagers, as you know, go through many physical, mental, emotional, and social challenges or changes. The biggest one is puberty. Some of you may be experiencing that right now, where it's the process of becoming sexually mature. It usually happens between 10 and 14 for girls, ages 12 and 14 for boys. So as their body changes, They may have many questions about sexual health. This is also a point in time where you're starting to say, who is this in my home? I'm not sure who this child is, but I would like my child, the one that listens, pay attention, and doesn't talk back, to return to our home. So during this time, tweens and teens start to develop their own unique personalities and opinions. Some have more opinions than others, but some noticeable changes are increased independence from parents. So at one time you can leave the house and not have a problem with them following right behind you. Now you may leave the house and they're like, all right, mom, it's okay, go right ahead. I'll be right here when you come back. More concerns about body image and clothes, especially girls. Girls are now checking themselves out. Many of them may have social media accounts and they're looking at what they're seeing and they're starting to ask themselves, is that the image? Is that what I'm supposed to look like? So they're questioning and having concerns about their body images and their clothing. You may start to see that they're dressing a little differently, a little bit more uniquely. They may put color combinations together that you're questioning, but hey, this is where they are in life at this point. More influence from peers. You may find that the girls are doing a little bit more talking on the phone. The boys may be outside playing a little bit more. That socialization is so much more important than spending time with mom and dad. They are becoming the social butterflies that, will probably take them through life. And then they have a greater sense of right and wrong. For them, at this point of development, they are not seeing a gray area. It's not a, have you ever thought of it this way? It's simply either right or wrong. Now, a recommendation that I would like to add, particularly around the clothing, is, pay more attention to your teen and ask questions. Here at the Parenting Center, we always talk about the power of connecting with your child and how the connections from the early start will definitely lead to a better and a greater relationship when you start to see challenges and go through this stage. So asking questions will show that you're attentive and interested in how they're changing. So instead of saying, why are you wearing that? You might start with a compliment and say, I like the shoe choice. What made you decide on that pair? And so I want to stop right here and share something with you. I'm not just telling you guys this because I've read about it. I actually have a teenager at home. The picture on the front cover is my daughter. And there are times where I am like, where did she go? But this is who she is, and I have to learn to embrace it. And the same with you all, those of you who are attending, whether you have a daughter or a son that's in this teen stage, learning more about the development will help you definitely live a stress-free life. All right, moving on. So now, based on just a little bit of information that I've given you, do you now better understand why your team may have worked so hard to get you to understand his or her side of the disagreement? And if you have a chance to just drop something in the chat box, just that little information about what's happening to them developmentally may make you understand, well, they're going through these changes. So now it makes better sense. I better understand why they were so adamant about getting their point across. So if anybody wants to drop anything in the chat, just to say yes, you can actually use your reactions to just share if now it makes more sense. If not, it's going to make sense shortly. We'll continue moving forward. So here is a teenage brain. And I just want you to kind of take it in. You can see that it's color coded. You can see at the front where that says love lobe, that's the prefrontal cortex. We'll talk about that in detail. But look at some of the different color codes you see. You see right below the love lobe, you will see addiction to Facebook and the cell phone. Well, if you have a teenager, they're probably addicted to TikTok because they tend to think the old people are on Facebook, right? So, and their cell phone, can't live without it. They have love for their parents, but they also have hate for their parents. Some days they're going to really like it, and other days they just cannot tolerate you simply being in the room. You're fussing about the chores. Now, not only pay attention to the color codes, but pay attention to the size of the color codes. So now you see that the addiction to the cell phone is a little bit larger. Your love for parents and the hate for parents are similar in size to the addiction to TikTok per se. But look at the memory for chores and homework. You see how small that is? So when you're saying, I told you to pick up your clothes out of the floor. I told you to wash the dishes before I got home. I told. Now you see that that's a very small portion of the brain that holds on to that. That's how much of their brain holds on to what you're saying to them. So that's why they need those constant reminders in a loving way. And then finally, their communication skills. If you look at that area right above where we are with memory for chores of homework, you can see that that area of the brain is just as small. And so at times, they may not say anything. They may make noise. When they respond to you, they may not be in words. They may just be grunts or something like that. The communication skills are also a small part of the brain at this time. But as parents, we teach them those skills and we teach them to use their words. It's just like toddlers. When they are learning to communicate and say, hey, I need some water, I need some milk, we almost have to retrain our teenagers to do the same thing. And communicating in a way that lets them know and understand that as a parent, there's a certain way that we engage in conversation. One is not through yelling. And when you start to yell, I disengage and move back because that's just not acceptable behavior. So we have to retrain them because going through puberty and seeing where they are at this point in stage, it just frustrates parents and me included. So now we're going to talk about the actual development of the brain. So the brain develops from back to front. So it first starts with the cerebellum. That's the physical coordination where they're able to, have good eye-hand coordination. Some teenagers that may be really good at sports, you'll see them, really good in that area. And so that's the part of the brain that allows them to be really either good at it or not so good. And then sensory processing, the word sensory, exactly what you're thinking. Their sense of sight, smell, taste, touch. Then you go on to the nucleus accumbens. This is the part of the brain that's where motivation lives. So you kind of see where that happens. So we've gone from 1 to 2. The third part of the brain, that starts to develop is the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that where emotions live and impulses. And when kids react a certain way, when you say, hey, I've told you to pick up the clothes out of the floor, I'm gonna get them. That's the part of the brain that is activated. And so throughout this session, not today, but starting next week, we're going to talk about when you get that response, then what do? And then finally, the last part of the brain to develop is the prefrontal cortex. This is the judgment executive center, right? This part of the brain develops when adults or young adults are approximately 25 years of age. If they've had a traumatic experience, it may take longer. So this part of the brain is where the decision making happens. And think about it, if your child is 15 and they have 10 years to go before this part of the brain fully develops. So let's talk a little bit more about the prefrontal cortex. So what does it control? It controls those sound decision making. So when things happen and your kids do something or your teenager or your tween does something and you're looking at them like, what? You can't understand it, right? This is where empathy, starting to put themselves in the shoes of others, because sometimes if it's not about them, they're not concerned about the feelings of others. But again, put the number 25 on this. This is when it is fully developed. Considering consequences. That's why they may decide they want to stay up late at night, knowing they have to be in-person learning or virtually learning 8 o'clock the next morning. But they're not thinking about consequences because the part of the brain that does think about consequences isn't fully developed. Regulating emotions. You're going to get that emotion. You're going to get it sometimes when you don't even think it's warranted. And you're looking like, well, what was that all about? You said one thing and then there was this meltdown of this outburst of this emotion that you can't make sense of as a parent. Self-awareness, being able to regulate, self and making those responsible decisions, not quite there yet, as well as morality. So now when you think about this being the last part of the brain that develops, right now your teenagers are not there. So when you want them to make sound decisions, it's not going to happen. When you want them to consider consequences for inappropriate behaviors, not going to happen. And when you say things like, what were you thinking? Well, they were not thinking, because the part of the brain that allows them to think about consequences or make choices or be responsible, be self-aware, regulate emotions isn't developed yet, right? So I just want to stop right there and allow anybody that's on the call to go ahead and put something in the chat box. Is there something that was mentioned that resonates with you? Are you feeling a little bit better now about why there may be some struggles with your teenager or tween? Okay, Don, we're going to move right along. Great information. Thank you. I think that's Michaela, possibly. Appreciate that, Michaela. All right, so now as a parent, let's talk about what you have control of and what you don't have control of. So on the left side, you see lack of control. The right side, you see control. You don't have control over their development. You yourself as a mom or dad went through the very same experiences. And one day, invite your mom over to the table, sit down with your tween or teenager and ask your mom about how you acted when you were your child's age. I did it. It was very enlightening, but it was something for us to also laugh about. So what you can control is understanding the development, taking the information that's being presented tonight and say, you know what? It's probably best that I not get myself all worked up about why my child did what they did. They did it because they just was not thinking. They were not thinking about the consequences. So understanding the development is something that you can control. You cannot control your teen's emotions or feelings, right? At this point, they lack emotional intelligence. That means they're not always able to regulate the feelings or emotions they're going through. Sometimes as toddlers, they may feel an emotion and not be able to name it. They might be frustrated. Virtual learning is driving them crazy. This new, being away from my friends is not so fun for them, but they don't always have the actual emotion or the language or the descriptor to say, Mom, you know what? I'm feeling frustrated, right? But if they are feeling frustrated and you get some of that, what you can control is how you respond to them. Pick your battles. Determine what thing you will and will not respond to. Now, we all come from different families, and there are families like mine who strongly believe a girl should not talk back. And so that is something that has followed me. You're just never disrespectful, no matter when you're trying to get your point across. It's never good to try to get your point across in the middle of the argument. But what you can do is teach your tween or teenager, you know what? Let's put some space between us, about 15, 20 minutes. Allow your emotions to calm down, allow me to calm down, and then we can come back and talk about it and discuss how we can do it differently. Don't always want to win the battle. It's not worth it. Let some things go. It's okay. Think about where they are developmentally and realize this is just not worth it. All right. Lack of control, mistakes your teens will make. They will. They will make mistakes on a regular basis. But what you can control is how you support your teen when the mistakes are made. So in the event that they get a bad grade on their report card, right? Instead of giving them a lecturing session about how well they're supposed to do in school and your mom did well in school, how dare you come home with an F, blah, 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 blah. At some point, they're going to stop listening to you because the teen brain just shuts off when it's too much noise. But what you can do is make your child responsible and take some level of accountability for doing better later on. Yes, an F hurts. I'm a mom. I've seen it. And I had to control my emotions. and just come back and say, okay, now that this F, you've made this F, what are you gonna do differently moving forward? Help me understand what steps and what accountability you're gonna take to change this grade around. Why? Because I know you can do it. You've done it before. You're not an F student. You are so much better than that. So now what you're controlling is how you support your team during that F. The last one is your team's ideas. They're going to think differently than you. You're going to say red, they're going to say purple. You're going to say blue, they're going to say green, right? Thinking about the ideas that they have around just how they move throughout life or just things that they want to do. So you can help your team identify the strengths and weaknesses of their idea or ideas and how that may have an impact on them. So say, for example, they're a teenager that's driving, right? And you're thinking about them driving at a certain time of night. Instead of saying, I don't want you out past a certain time, which you will say, because I'm sure that's part of your rule, have some discussion with them about what that may ultimately, why that may ultimately be a problem. In other words, you're out late at night, something could ultimately happen and I'm not, I may be asleep or what have you, but the point I'm trying to make is instead of always being there to provide the answer for your children or for your teens or tweens, allow them to be able to come up with solutions to problems, or well, let's identify the strengths. The strengths of you driving is that you can get around a little bit more freely. The weakness is sometimes you may not see danger where I see danger. So I'm asking you to come home at a certain time because it's a safety issue, right? So that becomes a conversation and not you need to be home by 12. I'm taking the keys for life. That's not going to be very effective. So now I think I've been talking about 25 minutes almost, just in the chat box, because we've come to the closing of this particular part of our session. But I just want to know in the chat box, what do you know now that you didn't know 25 minutes ago? Do share in the chat box, please. Well, I'm sure you've learned a lot of things and maybe you're not willing to share at this time. Thank you, Michaela. To have more understanding of your teenager, that's a very good one. And there are days you're gonna just be like, you guys have no idea how many times at home I have to have Alexa set a timer because it's in me. I'm ready to respond, but I'm like, you know what? I can't do because teens, they're emotional. They tend to watch how you move. And if you go here, they're going here. If you go there, they're going there. So instead of creating that ongoing battle with them, find ways to disconnect. And my 3 favorite initials are DNE. Do not engage. Find out what you're going to pay attention to, and then figure out what you're going to pay attention to and what you're not going to pay attention to. So thank you, Michaela. Great answer to have more understanding of your team. Next slide, Dom. So right before we started, I said my purpose or role today was to help you learn about teen development and behaviors associated with teen development. And I'm just checking back in to let you know that I feel those objectives were met, but I want to make sure that you feel those objectives were met as well. So if you want to do a reaction chat box, just kind of let me know if the objectives were met. All right, I'm going to take that as a yes. So I just want to share a couple of, thank you, Cheryl. I want to share a couple of classes that we offer here at the Parenting Center. If you want to understand more about the development, this is a great class, Growing Up for Girls, ages 9 through 12, Growing Up for Boys, ages 10 through 13. If you have your phone right now and you can take a screenshot of that, or you can grab our phone number. This class, parents attend with their kids, and so they learn more about the development process. And I think it's extremely helpful. I actually attended the class with my daughter as well. I just want to say thank you. I enjoyed my time with you guys this afternoon. I know that our time was limited. There is more we have to do, so I'm going to turn it over to Dominique and let her close us out.
Thank you, Patrice. We're going to now transition into some questions that I did get privately submitted in the chat box. As a reminder, we do still have that survey link in the chat box, so please feel free to complete this while we go through any questions and answers. You can just copy and paste the link into another browser and just get started that way. It's a very quick and easy survey. I'm going to start with one question that I received. Every afternoon conversation after school seems to start with an argument. How do we start to better communicate at these times during the day?
Mom or dad, you can definitely start the day being about you and shift the focus. Ask yourself, what is the argument about? And can I change the topic so that it is not about the tween or teenager? If it's something that involves the child, it's probably going to create the argument. The teenager or tween will be saying, there she goes again. Do we have to do this every day? So instead of making the focus on the student, if you're asking, how was school today? Did you remember to do this? Did you remember to do that? Start to share a part of your day, something that happened at work that excited you, made you happy, or something that you're looking forward to. So to me, I think a good idea would be to shift the topic. What are you talking about? Change it up.
Great reply. Another question that I received, what are some ideas to positively reinforce household responsibilities and remembering to do those chores? I often get upset with the lack of my child's concern for carrying out these responsibilities.
So now you saw that part of the brain, that little bit of part of the brain that remembers. It can be done through reminders. Incentives still work for tween and teenagers as they do for toddlers. Find out what it is that that child is most interested in. If the phone is something that they're connected to on a regular basis, what are the rules that you have in place around the phone? I'll just give you an example. I take my daughter's phone every night at 9 o'clock because I need her to be well rested and going to bed. She has made a choice several times to bring it to me at 9:10 or 9:15. And you know what? I don't even sweat the small stuff. I said, okay, you brought it in at 9:15. You know what the rule is. Tomorrow means you're going to turn it in at 8:45. So mom or dad, find a way to connect. Now that you know that that little part of the brain is remembering chores and homework, do your reminders and find a way to incentivize it. Don't necessarily make it a punishment when they don't do it, but you can share some language like, you know what, I feel extremely frustrated when I come home. So the message is changed from, why did you not do blah, blah, blah? You start to use I messages and share with your child or your tween or teenager how it makes you feel when the chore has not been completed.
Thank you so much for that one. So those two were our two questions that were submitted. You know, if anyone would like to use the chat box now to submit additional questions, or if some may come up at another time, please submit them to Keith Haywood, and we will do our best to answer those questions and get that feedback to you guys. As we close out tonight's session, I just want to send a reminder that round 2 of the One App process will open soon, and Inspire NOLA Charter Schools will have seats open at 42 Charter School, Pierre Capto Charter School, Andrew Wilson Charter School, and Dwight Eisenhower. So this is just a gentle reminder about that upcoming. And we want to thank everyone for joining tonight's webinar this evening. We enjoyed your company. We hope that today's webinar was helpful for you and for your families. The Parenting Center at Children's Hospital is dedicated to supporting all families within our community and ensuring that kids grow up happy and healthy. So once again, thank you so much for your time this evening. If you haven't already, please use that survey link that we have in the chat box, and any feedback that you guys can provide to us is greatly beneficial. We will join you guys again in a week, next Wednesday at 6 o'clock for part 2 of this session. Patrice?
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Dominique, for all your support tonight. Have a great evening.
Take care.